Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank all of you for coming, first of all, to the Downstate New York Adapt Voting Past, Present, and Future. For those of you who are here as participants, we thank you very much. You will remain muted throughout the duration of the presentation. We intend to send the slides out probably either Tuesday or Wednesday, just to make sure that everything is correct and everything is fine with that. In addition to that, please note if you have questions, please hold them to the end. Use the raise hand function when possible. For JAWS users, it's Alt-Y. For VoiceOver on Mac, it's Option-Y. And for the iPhone, just go down to the More section and click the raise hand function. And without further ado, I'll hand this over now to Cathy Collins.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience. I'd just like to note, since tomorrow is September 11th, I'd like to take a moment just to recognize that fact and all the people that we lost on that day and that we have continued to lose. Okay, now we will start on a happy note. We will start this presentation. And our first speaker today will be Marilyn Tucci. Marilyn is a longtime resident of Long Island, and she has been since the 1990s an advocate for the disabled community. She has received numerous awards and recognitions for her involvement in many areas. Marilyn works for Suffolk Independent Living Organization, also known as SILO, where she is constantly helping people with all disabilities and provides peer counseling, a great deal of advocacy, important information to people with disabilities and other disability organizations, as well as provides referrals. Marilyn has been facilitating a support group for the past 11 years and is a member of the Lions Club of Islip, which provides community services. She has a wonderful guide dog named Hedwig, and he is instrumental in her independence, which this has led to Marilyn advocating for those with similar needs for guide dogs. Marilyn does public speaking and fundraising. And now I'm going to bring it over to Marilyn, but Marilyn, can you just hold on a second? I just want to bring up the slides, and everyone, I just want you to know that these slides will be provided next week with additional slides on information that we feel is important to the community on voting. So just have patience with us. And thank you for your patience. And I'll tell you 1 second, Marilyn, when I have the screen. Okay, great. 1 second. I'm sorry, everybody, keep you waiting. And let's see. Okay, let me see what's happening here. Oh dear, let's see. Okay, open up. Does everybody see the screens yet? There we go. Exact. Okay, great. All right, Marilyn.
Yeah.
Oh, it's loading. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marilyn. You can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to start with the 20th century because voting was before the 20th century, but I'm just going to start with a little history I've done some research on. And I just want everybody to know, please bear with me because I am blind and I am reading this off of my iPad. So I'm going to put my earphones in, and I'm not the best reader in the world. I've been practicing. So I know I'm going to make mistakes, but thank you for bearing with me.
I just like everyone to note that there's only one slide for Marilyn's presentation, and it just shows her name and that she's from Suffolk Independent Living Organization. It shows the logo, and it states our continuing struggle to vote independently and privately. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Thank you. As the 20th century began, all males 21 and older could legally vote. However, women were upset that African-American men received their suffrage before them. After World War I, the 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920. People with disabilities still did not have the right to vote. Forward ahead many years, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 contained certain provisions to allow voters who are blind and had other disabilities to receive assistance from a person of their choice to help them vote. In 1971, 10 million 18 to 20-year-olds got the right to vote, including disabled young people. The National Voters Act, the National Registration Voters Act of 1993 aims, amongst other things, to increase historically low registration rates of persons with disabilities. Sorry about that. It requires all offices that provide assistance or state-funded programs that primarily serve persons with disabilities the right to vote in federal elections. The Voting Accessibility for the Elderly and Handicapped Act of 1994 required accessible polling places in federal elections for elderly individuals and people with disabilities where no accessibility to serve as a polling place. Voters must provide an alternative means of voting on election day. When I was old enough to vote, I went with my parents to vote for the first time. My mother assisted me and was shocked when I told her who I wanted to vote for. My parents were Democrats and I wanted to vote Republican for Nixon because President Nixon promised to bring our troops home from Vietnam. I had protested against the Vietnam War while my husband served there. I learned to listen to what the politicians were going to do if they were elected. There are good Democrats and good Republicans, and I voted for whom I thought would do the best job. After that election, my husband always came with me to the booth. I would pull the lever back and the curtain would close. There were little metal clips that you pulled forward to vote. When you pulled the lever back, your vote went through and the curtain opened. When my husband passed away, I went to the polling place with my guide dog for 14 years alone when I voted. I had to have a Democrat and Republican in the booth with me. It was still a curtain with the lever, still no privacy, so they knew how I voted. 2 years ago, I received a letter in the mail that my polling place, a school 2 blocks away from my house, was now moved to the next town over, which was hard for me to get there. I can take paratransit. I can take paratransit there, but didn't know how long I would be in a polling place. So I had to always find other means of going home from voting. In 1908, the ballot marking devices were introduced to New York. I called my Board of Election to see about trying it. Every year at my agency, Silo, we have invited the Board of Election to come to our events so hundreds of our clients can learn how to use the BMD. Last October 20th, when there was early voting because of the pandemic, my friend offered to take me to vote since you were able to vote in any polling place in your township. We went to the town of Brookhaven on Sunday at 12. The line was so long there. The line was so long, it went around the building and the parking lot. When I asked the poll worker if there were lines for people with disabilities and senior, I was told no. I asked how long the line was. He said 3 hours. we decided to go Monday morning near my house. We arrived at 10 to 6, and there was already 12 people online. The line filled up very fast, and around the corner and down the road and a few blocks away. Before 7, when the polling places opened, many elderly people asked for chairs, but they were told no. My friend and her husband, who were poll workers, were leaving after sleeping there, guarding the votes. I asked her to bring out chairs, which she did. We were the second group allowed in after the doors opened. I told when we went in, they told me to go over to that table. I asked, what table? I can't see. My friend took me. The man asked me to sign the iPad. He then looked at it, at my signature, and said, is this you? My friend flipped and said, are you kidding? You see her with her guide dog. She can't see. I asked to use the BMD and was told over there. Me, where? 2 ladies came and brought me to the BMD. It was facing the wrong way. I asked them to turn it. I asked them to turn it to the wall so no one could see how I voted. The machine wasn't working. After an hour, I told them I had enough. My friend voted for me, taking away my right to privacy, but I was glad she was there to assist me. Many times I've had problems with the BMDs not working and waiting for people to fix, which sometimes up to 2 to 3 hours. I contacted Disability Rights New York and filed a HAVA complaint and won. Suffolk County is supposed to do sensitivity training and make sure the BMDs work before someone comes in to use it. Voting is one of the most important civil rights. We need to work hard to make sure voting is accessible for all people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that great story and the history of the disability community with respect to voting, Marilyn. And now we will go on to our next presenter, who is Tasha Leveros, who has been working at the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York, also known as Sydney, since 2017, where she first started helping people with disabilities with issues concerning the Access a Ride program operated by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. This summer, she became a voting access organizer and trainer for Sydney. And so today she's going to teach you all about everything you wanted to know about registering to vote, but were afraid to ask. So go ahead, Tasha. I'm going to go to the next slide that begins your presentation. Whoops, hold on a second. And there we are. Okay, great.
Thank you, Kathleen.
I registered to vote, and here we are on the first.
Good afternoon, everyone. So how and where to register to vote. One, you can request a New York State voter registration form by mail by entering your name directly into the New York State Board of Elections mailing list database. 2, you can call the New York State Board of Elections at 367-8683 hotline to request a voter application. If you have a valid ID from the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, you can register to vote online. You can register in person at your county board of elections or at any New York State agency-based voter registration center. You may also submit your voter application form at the Department of Motor Vehicles, either in person or on their website if you already have DMV issued identification. Next slide. How to check if you're registered. New York State, click on the link that we have that will provide you, or by telephone, you can call 518-474-6220. In New York City, you can click on the link. Once again, I'll provide you with the link, or by telephone, you can call the 866-868-3692 number, or by TTY 212-487-5496. If you don't get a registration card within 4 to 6 weeks of completing your application, you can call the Board of Elections to see if your application was processed. New York State registration form. Register to vote using the New York State registration form accessible at the links below. You can complete a PDF version of the New York State voter registration form online by clicking on the link below, typing the necessary information, and selecting the appropriate boxes. Alternatively, you can print the form to complete by hand. They have the English form, and they also have it in Spanish. Once completed, print the form and sign it. The Board of Elections cannot accept any kind of digital or Adobe generated signature. Then mail the form to your county Board of Elections. New York State registration form continued. You can also complete an accessible version of the New York State registration form online by clicking on the link below, typing the necessary information, and selecting the appropriate boxes. We have it in accessible English form, and they have it in accessible Spanish form. When complete, print the form and sign and date it. Then mail the form to your county Board of Elections. Once you register, you are permanently registered unless, 1, you moved your residence outside the city or county in which you were registered. 2, you are an active voter who was not voted in any election, including 2 consecutive federal elections, and have not confirmed your address during that period. 3, you are convicted of a felony and imprisoned or on parole. However, you can vote after conviction of a felony if you have received a pardon from the governor or you are on probation. And 4, you are judged mentally incompetent by a court. How to make changes to your registration. Change of name and or address. The voter registration form should be used as a change of address form. Notices of change of address from registered voters received at least 20 days before a special, primary, or general election by a county Board of Elections must be processed and entered in the records in time for that election. Change of party enrollment. You can enroll in a party when you register to vote or do it later. If you do it later, you may miss the deadline to be able to vote in a primary election. Also, you can change your party enrollment from one party to another. The deadlines for enrolling in a party as well as changing your party enrollment are set forth in the slides that will be provided to you after this presentation. For victims of domestic violence, New York election law 5-508 allows victims of domestic violence who obtain a court order from the New York Supreme Court, Family Court, or County Court in their county where they are registered to have their voter registration record kept separate and apart from other registration records and not be made available for inspection or copying by the public or any other person except election officials acting within the course and scope of their official duties. Under a separate section of the law, can you go back? Kathleen, yeah, thanks. Under a separate section of the law, 11-306, you can also be excused from going to your polling place to vote and get a special ballot. For further information, You should contact your local board of elections for their confidential registration and special ballot procedures. Voter qualification. One, you must be a citizen of the United States, includes those persons born in Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Two, be a resident of the state and the county, city, or village for at least 30 days before the election. Three, be 18 years old by the end of this year. Four, not be in prison or on parole for felony conviction unless parolee, pardoned, or restored rights of citizenship. Five, not be adjudged mentally incompetent by a court. Six, not claim the right to vote elsewhere, such as outside the city of New York. And seven, a person who is at least 16 years of age and who is otherwise qualified to register to vote may pre-register to vote and shall be automatically registered upon reaching the age of eligibility. Now, as for deadlines, November 2nd, this year, general election deadlines, registering to vote. These are strict deadlines to register to vote. Presently, your application must be received no later than October 8th to vote in the November 2nd election. If mailed, applications must be postmarked no later than October 8th, 2021, and received by a Board of Elections no later than October 13th, 2021, to be eligible to vote in the general election. If honorably discharged from the U.S. military or have become a naturalized U.S. citizen after October 8th, you may register in person at the Board of Elections up until October 23rd, 2021. Who to contact for help registering to vote? At New York State Board of Elections, 40 North Pearl Street, Suite 5, Albany, New York, 12207-2729. We have the contact. We'll provide you with the further contact information toward the end of this.
Just hold
Cathy.
on 1 second. I just have to get the next page. Sorry. I'm just having
Okay.
a mechanical problem here. I don't know why it's, oh, okay. I just had to hit the thing. Okay, and then these, you want to just say about that these are websites they can go to also?
Sure. New York State Board of Elections, for general website, you can go to www.elections.ny.gov/index.html. County Board of Elections roster, you can go https, I forget, colon, I forgot, sorry.
Okay, I do that all the time.
/ public reporting.elections.ny.gov/county board roster/county board roster.
Perfect. Oh, and then you had something about the National Voter Registration Act. That's
Yes.
information.
For National Voter Registration Act, we have the contact info. One is 1-800-469-6872. Another is 518-474-1953. And the fax number is 518-473-8315.
Great. Okay, thank you so much, Tasha. You did a great job. There's a lot of information
problem.
there, and we will be sending out slides that have all that information and some other information that we just didn't have enough time to present today. Our next speaker is going to be Terrence Page, who's going to be speaking about one of the new voting laws, that is the sample ballot. And Terrence currently serves as the president of the Greater New York Council of the Blind, which is a chapter of the American Council of the Blind of the state of New York. Before assuming the presidency, he served as a delegate to the state of New York for 3 terms there. Terrence received an associate degree in sociology from Nassau Community College and a Bachelor of Arts degree from Long Island University, CW Post Campus, where he majored in English, literature, and minored in political science. He is a published writer, poet, musician, and professional artist. His expertise is in voter legislation and voter education. Mr. Page has spoken on various topics, including voter disability rights, disability voter legislation, patients' rights, African-American masculinity, and achieving success in college. He has been featured in the New York Times in an article entitled "Why the Pandemic Has Made Streets More Dangerous for Blind People." And that's the December 3rd, 2020 issue. Mr. Page was born legally blind with visual acuity of 2400 and previously enjoyed vision with corrective lenses to 2040. In the early 2000s, due to a series of unfortunate accidents following glaucoma spikes, his vision vacillates now between total blindness and acceptable vision. He's also a humble transplant recipient. Okay, Terrence, you're ready? And
Thank you.
I don't have any slides for him other than this one slide that says a sampling. I'm sorry, we have one more slide after this that has the logo and Terrence's name, and that is with the council, the New York City Council of the Blind, and that it says here sample ballot legislation. Go ahead, Terrence.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good afternoon, everybody. I am a 6-foot-tall African-American male wearing a short sleeve shirt. I'm here to discuss the sample ballot. The sample ballot became law earlier this year, January 1st, 2021. What is the sample ballot? The online sample ballot is the ballot that allows individuals to see the same ballot that everyone else gets to see. The sample online ballot law makes it accessible to screen readers. There are over 90 combinations of screen readers. For example, if you're a person who is blind or visually impaired wanted to use the sample online ballot, it would tell you the party's affiliations, any proposals, all those same ideas that would be on the same sample ballot that everyone else got to see, except this would be accessible by a screen reader. The sample ballot is provided by your Board of Elections. It is produced in every Board of Elections, so it may vary. They will not look the same. They will come with various languages depending on what's popular in your voting district. The sample ballot will be available the end of September or late October when the slate is provided. When the ballot goes online, depends on your voting district. I suggest you call whatever voting district you're in and ask them. They're obligated to tell you that. The sample ballot is key to getting information you need to vote. This law was fought for, and we are very happy that it has been signed into law. The sample ballot will make your life so much easier that you have the same information that everyone else has. And information in democracy is the key to success. So I would like to thank you and best of luck, and check in with your Board of Elections. Make sure the sample ballots work. Not all Board of Elections are following the laws, so make sure you go to their websites and make sure that the sample ballot is accessible by a screen reader. If it is not accessible by a screen reader, please contact the Board of Elections in your area and remind them of the law, that this law, that the online sample ballot law must be followed as of this year, as of January 1st, 2020. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Terrence. And our next speaker will be Mark Shaw from the Western New York Independent Living, Inc. That's the next slide, and it also shows their logo. And then it's a head and something that looks like arms, and it says Western New York Independent Living, Inc., family of agencies. The next slide, we're moving to, but let me just say a little bit about Mark. Mark has been a lifelong resident of Niagara County. He suffered an AVM rupture and several other neurological issues in 2004. Mark is currently an independent living specialist. benefit specialist, and systems advocate in the Western New York Independent Living, Inc. Mark received an associate's degree in human services from SUNY Niagara County Community College, a bachelor's degree in health and human services with a concentration in community mental health from SUNY University at Buffalo, and received a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Niagara University. He is a clinical mental health counselor, a substance abuse counselor, and a Niagara Falls board member of the Human Rights Commission. In his spare time, which I don't know how he has any, Mark enjoys camping. So Mark, if you can now present a little bit about what's happening with new legislation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a 37-year-old white male. I have short brown hair. I'm sitting in my office. I have a white t-shirt on with an eagle and the American flag. So we're here for the reason we're here today. One of the reasons we're here today is because next week, September 13th through the 17th, is National Disability Voter Registration Week. Typically, voter registration week, or the voter registration week is typically held in July and has several of different events, such as voter registration drives, other celebrations, trainings, digital outreach centered around disability voting. Next slide.
We're on the next slide
Okay.
with however.
Yeah. Even though it is year in 2021, the National Disability Voter Registration Week has been moved to September from July. The thought is by changing the date of this event, it should make it easier for people with disabilities to get more involved in the voting process. Next slide. In 2019, New York State included in its budget $14.7 million for electronic poll books and an additional $10 million for the counties to implement early voting. Now in New York State, there are 9 days of early voting for every election. Early voting is just like voting on the election day. Your vote still will be counted in that total, the unofficial totals or unofficial results / totals at the end of election night. In New York State, voters and the state can visit any early voting center in their county of residence. However, if you are a resident of New York City, you are assigned a specific place to go and cast your early vote. Hours of operation for early voting. On the weekdays, local boards of election must provide a minimum of 8 hours per day on weekdays between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. All voters must have access until 8 p.m. or on at least 2 weekdays. On the weekends, the local boards must provide a minimum of 5 hours of early voting on all weekend days and or holidays between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Couple examples of legislation, and we as people, we as the people must remain vigilant and stay on top of our ever-changing election laws. One such piece of legislation that I personally like, not everybody would, I'm guessing, but as S6379 is companion bill in the Assembly A6046, which allows for an individual to request absentee ballot through electronic means, including email, a website, or any other electronic system that might be set up. The only problem with this bill is that there is a sunset clause on it, and it is only in effect until December 31st, 2021. So again, we need to stay vigilant and stay on top of these things so we can fight and advocate for them. Another bill that has become law is S264 and its companion in the Assembly, A5783. This bill has infringed on somewhat upon our freedoms, for lack of a better term. And the days of the time frames in which an individual has to get their absentee ballot has been changed, so it puts a little bit more of a crunch on people. You have to your ballot has, or your request for a ballot has to be received by the Board of Elections 7 days in advance. I believe, I know I used to be 7 days, 13 days in advance of the election.
15.
So election advocates are suggesting that individuals put it in the mail at least 22 days in advance to make sure it gets to the Board of Elections on time.
And I believe that's the end of Mark's presentation. Thank you, Mark. There's so much that's been happening out there in election and voting laws, but we just had only time to just do a small sample. So we will provide you also with a few others in the upcoming slides. Our next speaker is Keith Gergie from the Resource Center for Accessible Living, Inc. And Keith is a graduate of SUNY New Paltz, from which he received a Bachelor of Liberal Arts in Political Science. Keith was born and raised in Lake Patron and graduated from Kingston High School in 2009. In August of that year, while on vacation in Delaware, Keith suffered a spinal cord injury while swimming. Keith spent several weeks in the ICU, after which time he was transferred to Helen Hayes Hospital, where he underwent intensive rehabilitation for over 5 months. In May of 2011, Keith began working at the Resource Center for Accessible Living as the systems advocate, where he worked until 2016, after which he left to continue and finish his bachelor's degree. Keith served on the board of the New York State Independent Living Council from 2015 to 2017, and currently serves on the board of the New York State Spinal Cord Injury Research Program. Keith returned to the Resource Center for Accessible Living in late November of 2019. In his free time, Keith enjoys watching movies, reading, listening to comedy and different podcasts, as well as enjoying nature and the outdoors. And Keith is going to talk on the 5 important proposals on the ballot for all New Yorkers this fall. Go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, Kathy. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. I am a Caucasian male with glasses and short brown hair and a beard. So, okay, I'm going to be discussing the 5 statewide ballot proposals that every New Yorker will see, in addition to their local races. And I would encourage everyone to access the Board of Elections link at the end of this slide to get further details. I'll just be discussing a summary. The first proposal, an amendment to the intermittent redistricting process. This proposed constitutional amendment would freeze the number of state senators at 63. It would amend the process for the counting of the state's population, delete certain provisions that violate the US Constitution, repeal and amend certain requirements for the appointment of the co-executive directors of the Redistricting Commission, and amend the manner of drawing district lines for congressional and state legislative offices. And that's the largest of the 5 ballot proposals. So if you'd like to see the actual text of the language, I encourage you to go online, and I'll put that in the chat too. The second proposal, an amendment granting New Yorkers the right to clean air, clean water, and a healthful environment. The summary reads, quote, the proposed amendment to Article 1 of the New York Constitution would establish the right of each person to clean air and water and a healthful environment. Fairly straightforward. And the next 2 are voting related. So Proposal 3, an amendment eliminating the 10-day advanced voter registration requirement. And the amendment would delete the current requirement in Article 2, Section 5 of the state constitution that a citizen be registered to vote at least 10 days before an election, and would allow the legislature to enact laws permitting a citizen to register to vote less than 10 days before the election. And this is an effort to get towards, like it says at the last end of the sentence, same day registration, which would allow individuals who are not registered yet to go to the polls when they decide to vote on election day or early voting, register that day and vote that day. Proposal number 4, an amendment authorizing no excuse absentee ballot voting. The proposed amendment would delete from the current provision on absentee ballots the requirement that an absentee voter must be unable to appear at the polls by reason of absence from the county or illness or physical disability. And this became allowed during the pandemic. Individuals were allowed to select temporary disability as a reason for the absentee ballot. Now, this would allow anyone to get an absentee ballot, like it says, no excuse. Proposal number 5 is an amendment increasing the jurisdiction of the New York City Civil Court. So this is only pertains to the city. The proposed amendment would increase the New York City Civil Court's jurisdiction by allowing it to hear and decide claims for up to $50,000 instead of the current jurisdiction limit of $25,000. It raises the dollar that civil courts can be heard. And this is the link to the Board of Elections for all the ballot language. I would just let everybody know, if you're using a screen reader, proposal number 1 takes up more than half of the page. So you scroll down quite a bit to get to the last 4. And that's it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was great. We will also provide information from the League of Women's Voters because they have more information on these ballot proposals. We will provide those on the upcoming slides that we will be sending out next week. Next speaker is Michael Ring. Michael graduated from the School of Social Welfare at Stony Brook University in 1990 with a master's degree in social welfare He was a school administrator until 2008 and then became a stay-at-home dad to raise his twins. Also, until 2014, he worked at a part-time job organizing running races and other endurance events. In 2014, he developed Guillain-Barré syndrome and became a wheelchair user for the better part of a year. Michael still uses ankle foot orthotics when he walks out of the house, and he has a significant damage to the motor nerves in his hands. He's a member of the Prospect Park Track Club and the Achilles International Running Club. He will be running the virtual London Marathon in October 2021 and the actual New York City Marathon in November. Michael is on the board of directors of Disabled in Action of Metropolitan New York and is a co-coordinator for the Downstate New York ADAPT, a chapter of National ADAPT. Also, he's an active member of the 504 Democratic Club and currently is a poll worker. That is, he's a seasonal employee of the Board of Elections in the city of New York and works on election day and during early voting in Kings County. And the slide that I'm going to show you now just states his name and the associations he's affiliated with their logos. And it just says what a person with a disability should expect when voting at a polling place. And then there's no further slides on this except for contact information, which we will provide. And now, Michael.
Hello, everybody. Michael, a 58-year-old white guy with short, dark hair. I need a shave. I'm wearing a t-shirt that mentions a running event I participated in, and I'm in my home office, so there's a bookcase behind me. And I'm going to talk about the transition. Like, I have both perspectives as an able-bodied voter and as a voter with a disability, because my disability didn't happen until I was 50. So I spent a great deal of my life not being disabled and never gave it much thought. And like most not disabled people, I grew up and I went with my parents to vote when they voted in the school I was going to. It was kind of cool that, I got to go behind the curtain and flip the levers back in, in the 70s in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn. And it never occurred to me. I'm bringing this up because it never occurred to me until I became a wheelchair user with a mobility disability that if I had this condition when I was 8 years old, my parents couldn't bring me behind the curtain and I couldn't reach up and pull those levers. It's just a given that I never really thought about. And I went away to college. I went to Stony Brook. And when I was there, I helped organize, I attempted to help organize the right for students who lived in the dorms to vote on campus. And I failed at that. I went through graduate school and other people were protesting every time the election was coming up. I had to vote absentee until I moved off campus. And as a big coincidence, my son now goes to Stony Brook. And in November of his freshman year, I asked him how voting went. And he was like, it was no big deal. I just went and voted. And I said, well, did you get an absentee ballot or did you vote? And he didn't even really know because, he was 18. But it turns out he voted in Suffolk County. And I'm just bringing this up because, all the work we do as political advocates, sometimes you win later. And the people who are receiving the benefit of your victory just take it for granted. So I felt pretty good about starting a fight, even though I didn't win the fight while I was there. The fight was eventually won and people had their rights and they didn't even think about it. So fast forward a little more. In 2008, I remember waiting in a gigantic line with my then 8-year-old twins to go vote at their school. It's Park Slope. So everyone came out to vote for President Obama that year. And we stood on line for 2 hours and it was kind of joyous and calm. And now I look back and I couldn't have voted. I couldn't have waited on that line even now with my mobility issues. It would have been very hard to do that. But people still do wait on lines. And now I'm a poll worker and we try to keep people from waiting on those lines. So when my disability happened in 2014, I came home from the hospital in September and I was pretty much stuck in the house a lot. And the first thing I wanted to do was go vote in November of 2014. My kids pushed me to the polling place, to their grade school. And I didn't know anything about the ballot marking device. And the poll workers there were very helpful. They had my son help me vote. They had him, read an oath and affirm that he would follow my instructions. But I didn't learn until I was a poll worker and took the training that they broke the law by helping me vote, because my son was 14 and a 14-year-old has no rights to swear an oath or affirm anything. It doesn't count. But I'm learning that the big picture of often poll workers want to get you to vote. So sometimes the rules get bent a little, and it's really not the end of the world. So in 2016, I decided to become a poll worker. And I took the class over the summer. Every summer, every poll worker has to take the same class. And the class was terribly boring. It was terrible. It was really a class on how to set up machines and how to break down machines. The instructors went very fast. I didn't learn anything. And I have a master's degree. I was in a PhD program, and I found it a useless class. But I looked at someone who had been there before, and they basically said, don't worry about it. In the election that's coming up, we're always overstaffed. And every new person just works with someone who's done it before. And at the end of your 17-hour workday, you will be an expert in everything you need to do. And that's what I learned. And one of the things I shared here, I'm not sure if it's in the slides or it'll go in the chat, are the videos that New York City poll workers get, the training we get. I keep saying poll worker, but I'm sorry, we are election day worker. Poll workers sounds like something else.
Yes, they will be provided.
The video is of the training I had my first time on how the ballot marking device works. And you'll see that it's someone going through how to open the machine, how to turn it on. And then there's another video on how to turn off the machine and then lock it up at the end of the day. But nowhere on the training does it tell you what the machine does or how it works. So that was never explained to us in our training. But I also provided a video of the training we got in 2017, my second year, which was a series of really excellent videos made by people with disabilities to tell able-bodied people how to work with people with disabilities. And I, as a disabled person, I felt it was made very well. It pointed out that, don't touch someone's wheelchair without their permission. Don't talk to someone's aides. I mean, the things that as a disabled person you take for granted, but until you're a disabled person, you might not, the videos help get rid of a lot of ableism. The videos mentioned, you're not allowed to assume someone's dog is a pet. If they say it's a service animal, it's a service animal and move on, but pets aren't allowed in the polling place. I attached that video, or you guys will get the video. And I also attached a video that was provided by the New York State Department of Elections on what the ballot marking device does. The ones that's used in the 5 boroughs, in Suffolk County, in Rockland, and a few upstate counties. It is the ES&S machine. And I'll talk a little bit about what it does and why you'd want to use it. Basically, a ballot marking device is a really fancy pen. It doesn't cast your vote, but it writes your vote. And it makes it so you don't have to hold a pen, nor do you even have to be able to read. You take your ballot, that is the same as everyone else's ballot, and you slide it into the machine and it is scanned. And then the machine could read you the choices of how to vote, and you could use a mouse, you can use a paddle, you could use a touch screen to assign how you want to vote. You can also use a sip and puff device if you need to. And we're trained on how to use it, but I've never seen it in action, but we're ready and able to use it. And the ballot marking device is also good if you feel like it might take you a long time to vote, because it comes with a chair, because it's a lower machine than the privacy booths. After you vote, it marks the little ovals. And what I learned just recently is that it marks every oval imperfectly, so that when your ballot comes out of that machine and then you bring it to the scanning machine to have your vote cast, if you were to thumb through all the ballots, you would not be able to tell which one was created by a machine and which one was created by a pen. I appreciate that a lot. But one of the problems with the ballot marking device is that not everyone in the polling place knows who should use it, because it is a little bit more complicated. Well, it adds a big layer of complication to voting, because instead of just taking a pen or a pencil and filling in the ovals, in a sense, you have to be able to operate a computer. And not everyone who may or may not be disabled is going to want to use a touchscreen computer to vote. So on election day, I'm inevitably assigned to help out with the ballot marking device. And sometimes the people at the entrance just send people over to the machine who are elderly, and they look at this machine like they're being asked to operate, a NASA equipment and send something to the moon. And then I'm able to say, well, you don't have to vote this way. You can still go over to the privacy booth and use a pen. And technically, we're not allowed to give people much help when it comes to their ballot. But one thing I would tell everyone who's watching is that most people who work on election day kindness comes first. I mean, it's been a long day, but if people need help, we're going to offer them help. Sometimes people ask questions on how to vote. They are like, people in the last election just grabbed their ballot and said, I can't see very well. Can you tell me where Eric Adams' name is? And I'm not really sure if I'm allowed to do that, but that's the question he asked. I'm not telling him who to vote for. I'm telling him what he wanted to know. So in reality, we might do that. And there's another thing, one of the final things I want to mention to everyone who goes votes on election day or early voting. All the systems that have been created to make things go correctly, they kind of go out the window in the evening, because in New York City, everyone who works on election day works all day. On election day, the polls open at 6 a.m. and all the poll workers are supposed to show up at 5 a.m. and the polls close at 9 p.m. So if you show up at 8 o'clock at night and have a problem, the election day workers are going to be physically and mentally incapable of handling your problem. So I urge people, if you're not sure, if you think something's going to go wrong, show up at 10 o'clock in the morning, show up at noon. Don't come the end of the day, because while we'll try to do our best, it doesn't always work out that way because we're tired. And one final thing I want to mention about the ballot marking device. I've never encountered this, because whenever I vote, I use the ballot marking device, and I make a point, I set it up, and at 6:01 a.m., after the initial line goes away, I go over and get my ballot to vote, and I use the ballot marking device to make sure it works. The problem is, when you show up to use the ballot marking device, not that many people use it, and you no matter what time you come, you might be the first person of the day to attempt to use it, and multiple things could go wrong. First of all, it's not necessarily true that the people who are assigned to help you use it know how to work it. So they might have to find the site coordinator, but it also might not work. And no one knows it doesn't work because no one's tried to use it. So, and the ballot marking device has problems. It's a mechanical device. And also, in a poorly supervised election polling place, if they're short-staffed, the ballot marking device won't even be unlocked. It's the last thing the staff's going to worry about, because often it never gets used. So at some polling places, I'm finding out, they don't unlock it until someone actually needs it, which is inappropriate, illegal, nasty, to make a person with a disability wait till it gets unlocked, which takes 10 minutes if you know what you're doing. So I guess in conclusion, I'm saying there's a lot of rules on voting that are there to make it possible for you to vote, but some of them make it harder for you to vote. And so you have to be patient. So I would urge everyone to vote, but show up early, lead with kindness, because the people who work on election day they're nothing more than your neighbors. And we're just trying to, get a day's pay and help people vote at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That was a great presentation. I see we're running out of time. I want to thank Chris, our interpreter, for being here today and doing ASL for us. And I'd like to thank the Western New York Independent Living for providing Chris as our interpreter today. Also, I'd like to thank Brandon for all his help with the technical parts of this presentation. And I don't know if we have time for any questions. I don't know, would that be okay, Chris? Do we have time? Do we have a couple of seconds? If anybody has any questions, quick. If not, we will. If you have any questions, we can also respond by email.
Rashida raised her hand.
Oh, Rashida, okay, you have a question, Rashida?
Just
Sorry.
before Rashida answers her question or asks her question, I just want to remind everybody, Alt Y to raise hand, Option Y on a Mac. For the phone, it's *9.
Okay. We only have a few minutes because we're running over time right now. And we do have to let our interpreter leave. I mean,
Go ahead, Rashida.
go ahead, Rashida.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to make it quick. This is not a question. It's just a comment. I think this was a great presentation. And I especially liked the component of the poll workers' point of view. Too often we go to these presentations and even do these presentations with this, what the poll site workers are doing wrong. And I really loved your part, Michael, because you gave some excellent tips on how we as people with disabilities can work better with coworkers. I mean, it takes a team. So this is a collaborative effort. So I really appreciated that. And like you said, kindness comes first. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure. And then we go to Misha.
Okay, I was at the AZT. I saw you, Kathy. I heard the end of this, Michael. Since this new device is not familiar to so many people, is there a way of having a flyer that's mailed out to a lot of disability organizations that may at least be able to make their members aware of this possibility? I know just as a teacher, I was working with literacy dyslexic students who were anxious about voting in the old machines. There were pictures and I went over it with them, but it gave them a little less anxiety. They knew what to behind the curtains, what it all looked like and so on. Is there a way of making this?
I think that's a great idea. And we will, if you can come to one of our voter engagement working group meetings on Tuesdays at 11:11, we'd be more than happy to put together something, either a flyer or even another presentation. And moving on, we have Misha. Misha, do you have a question? Misha Johnson, there's a raised hand. Going once, going twice. Do we need to unmute Misha?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, can you do that for us, Brandon?
Hang on.
Thank you, Chris, for staying over a few more minutes. I really appreciate it.
Misha, if you get to it first, if you're on your computer, it's Alt Y. I'm sorry, Alt A. Hang on, I'm trying to
Oh,
find it.
okay. Okay, I can ask to unmute her. Okay, I actually.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
I don't know what the heck was going on with my computer, but no, I just want to say you guys did an excellent job with all of the presentations, and just more of another comment. I try to use the BMD machines anytime I vote, and it is a challenge more often than not, and so I would like to see about working with the election board, because I believe that they have done a number of, or they, at least they did one for the Suffolk County Disabilities Advisory Board. They did just a small presentation, and they did give us a little bit more insight about the BMD machines. But I think the videos would be very helpful. So you guys said that those will be included in the slides?
Yes, we will send a link to them. So you'll be able to click on the link.
Awesome, awesome. Because and we'll be able to share that information.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
okay.
this
I
slide.
just make sure.
The purpose of the slide is
sometimes
to share it everywhere to even people
Yeah.
who aren't disabled, you know.
Right.
This is for everybody to learn.
You know, I know that previous you got to be careful with sharing other people's stuff, so I just want to make sure.
Right. No state secrets, as Anna Elizabeth writes in the chat. No, that's what we were.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right,
All right.
awesome, perfect. You guys have a great day.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. And this is Cathy Collins. I have short brown hair, brown eyes, Caucasian woman with the pink top that's no sleeves. So I didn't mention that earlier. So that's I think the end of the presentation, and we